everyone, and welcome back to the Hazardous Artist Series, Episode 8, Why I Otter. Are you guys enjoying these videos? For we are at an exciting conclusion to the sea otter. For next week, we will have a brand new animal to bring into the mix on this wonderful little season of cute animals. And it's only going to expand from there because I'm still working on cute animals. So, with that, you guys, if you are interested in the coloring process of the basic, the shading, and the highlights, then head on over to the Hazardous Artist Series, Episode 1, for all your coloring needs. And if you guys are curious to the bane of my existence and how I do the inking process, then head on over to the Episode 7, the one right before this one, for all your comedy relief for the year. So, let's jump in and talk about sea otters. So, before I moved to the West Coast, the only otter I had ever seen in my life, even in a zoo, was a river otter. And for me, they're pretty big, bigger than a weasel or even a small dog in some cases. But they were the only otter I'd ever seen. So when I came out to California for the first time and went to Morro Bay, I had seen my first sea otter. And I was shocked. I was shook, you guys, because the sea otter is huge. So huge. And I hadn't seen them in an aquarium. So my first time seeing a sea otter was in the wild. And I couldn't believe it. And what fascinated me more was the fact that they drift on their back, which means they swim on their back, they eat on their back, and it was just something that completely took me by surprise when I came here. But sea otters are actually very fascinating little creatures, for they do swim on their back, and they eat on their back, and they use tools. There is not a lot of animals in the world that use tools to get food or for whatever need they have that they need a tool for, except for maybe the primates and ravens. But that's a whole different ballpark. So sea otters will use rocks, and they are more likely to use the same rock because they have a quote-unquote favorite rock they use to break open their food source, which is clams and urchins. And they will dive down into these kelp forests, these huge kelp forests, for their food source. And what always made me laugh, because I only found out recently, I heard the stories from Ken's mother, but what always made me laugh was the first time I had gone to Morro Bay to see the sea otters and their pups. And what always made me laugh was the whole process of teaching the pup how to swim. And the way that mothers will do this is that the pups will be, on their mother as their their lifesaver, their if you tip over, we all die, live or die kind of flotation device. But the mothers will shove their pups off of them, swim a little bit away, and it will force the pup to swim to them. And that's not the funny part, because I think a lot of people would call me cruel for thinking that part was funny. But the funny part is the complaining by the pups as they're, frantically more or less drowning, swimming to their mothers. It's that they emit this weird call when they do it, kind of like a human child who doesn't get their way. The wah, wah, wah kind of call. That was a little bit not the greatest call in the whole wide world, but you get my point. It sounds similar to that decibel. I don't know. So these little pups are complaining, probably running their mother's name through the waves. Haha, See what I did there? Just to swim to them and get back on their flotation device before they, drown. And all I gotta say is that that's a pretty good way of, I guess, teaching a child how to swim. Maybe. Although I do have to say, if a human mother tried to do that, I'm pretty sure the Child Protective Services would be at her front door. So it's probably not a good idea for humans, but for animals that need to learn how to swim immediately after birth, or when they're growing up, it's kind of a good way for them to learn how to swim. And I don't have any children, so no Child Protective Services can come to my front door unless they want to take Raina. But they would need some muscle for that. She's kind of a big cat. And for me, Raina wouldn't learn how to swim. Even if I pushed Raina in a pool, she wouldn't swim. She would just float. That's how buoyant she is. And we're just going to leave it at that. I don't want to offend my cat, She's got claws. So, sea otters. Sea otters are a very fascinating creature, other than the fact that they can use tools and, push their children into the briny deep to force them to swim, learn how to swim, is that their food source, clams and urchins, is an important factor in population control to keep the kelp forests healthy. And that's because the sea urchins actually eat the kelp, and the sea otters will keep their populations down. So, and with any carnivore, because let's be fair, if sea otters could hunt all the urchins, they probably would. But because, and this is basically like a generalization of all carnivores, their hunt success rates are between 20 and 35%. They're not very high, except for that one little cat in Africa, but we're not talking about that cat in Africa. That's got an insane hunt success. But I can only imagine that the sea otter does not have a hunting success of that, high. So even if they hunted as much of the urchins as they could in one day, it would not, it would not destroy the population of the sea urchins. But the reason why the sea urchins need to be in control is because without the sea otters, they could eat entire, kelp ecosystems, and it would just damage that whole ecosystem for every creature that lives and thrives and, needs that kelp for protection from predators. So I would argue, maybe, if you are a wildlife biologist or a marine biologist, you can debate with me on this, but I would think, in my opinion, that a sea otter would be a keystone species and they would need to be protected for that reason. But with any carnivore, they keep some amount of herbivore populations down so that, the herbivores don't destroy their own home. And you could say a lot about humans too, but that is a different conversation for a different day. So back to the sea otters, because I keep getting sidetracked. Sea otters, I always see them when I go, if not at least one. I don't think I ever went to the coast and not seen at least one sea otter. If you go at the right time of year, you get to see the sea otter families, and those are interesting because they have like this familial connection. And I heard, was on TikTok, that this little known fact that sea otters will actually hold each other's paws when they sleep so they don't drift apart. And that, you guys, is my wholesome fact of the day, because that just brings so much happiness to my heart hearing that. And sea otters, man, they're not my favorite animal on the list. They are cute and cuddly and furry, which you would think with me that it would be on my list, but it's not. My favorite animal is in this series, though, later on, but the sea otter is, it's a sea otter. They're cute. But I think what people don't understand with otters in general and why you don't really see a lot of people who have otter pets like they do with tigers, which makes no sense to me, but is that otters are actually pretty aggressive from what I've read. So keeping one as a pet would require a sense of knowledge, a sense of behavioral knowledge of otters in general to be able to, you know, adapt to their form of social, um, yeah, to their socialness. I don't know what I was thinking, but I sounded smarter in my head than I do when I'm talking. Happens way too often. So, sea otters! Because we keep getting sidetracked. I like sea otters, you guys. They are awesome, and if you ever see them in the wild, they are, just observe them. They're so fascinating. And then when they dive, you gotta wait till they come back up. But you guys, unfortunately, this video does have to come to an end. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did, because I love recording these for you. And, stay tuned for next week's animal. It's going to be a surprise because even I don't know what I'm going to pick from my list of cute animals that I want to do for next week. But, there's going to be facts about that one, I'm sure, because I love animals. And yeah. So if you guys enjoyed this and you want to hear more about my weird facts that I somehow know about some of these animals, then like this video, comment below, and share with everyone you know who wants to hear about some random, probably well-known facts about sea otters. But until then, you guys, I will see you next week. In the meantime, dare to create.